Welcome back, everybody, to Blue Jay Center podcast, brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. And boy, Rob, it's been a little while since you I hopped on here and talked generally Blue Jays baseball, buddy. First off, before we get into it all, we'll break down what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about Chris Bassitt and the kind of, he's had some interesting comments recently. One about the dome, and then the weather, and
yes,
and well, we'll get into that stuff. We'll talk about some Joey Votto. You got some stat genius for us. We'll talk on the farm, which is cooking. Lots of things to discuss right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Now, Berto, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show today, because there's some doozies we're talking about. You and I, obviously, we were away. We mentioned before we left that I was heading out west to Alberta to see Calgary, Luke Combs, and Banff, and oh my God. And you and Mo were taking a trip, not as far west, but you guys were seeing Chicago and seeing the Jays there. You saw Milwaukee, you got Lambeau. Talk to me, buddy. How was the trip?
it was good. Aside from the Jays, stop if you've heard that before this season. Yeah, no, it was an awesome trip. Me and Mo went down there to Wrigley, like I mentioned on our last show. What we did, it was my second time at Wrigley, and yeah, the atmosphere is just awesome. I mean, I know you still have to cross off your bucket list, which when you do, it's going to be very exciting because Wrigley's just awesome. It's just an old style ballpark. You could smell the history there. The concourses are all jangled up and weird, but yeah, the field's awesome. The ivy, we got to sit in the bleachers, which is part of the Wrigley experience. Really cool stuff until the game actually started, which, when you're watching 2024 Blue Jays, that tends to be the theme. And the worst part of it all is that we were there for the little good that happened on that weekend. We weren't there for. So game one on Friday, 8 innings, are down 5-2. Offenses, anemic. When they're not playing the Angels, they're anemic. We've seen it all season long. And they're down 5-2. We had to go to the game in Milwaukee that night. About an hour and a half drive for those of you who are unfamiliar. So we had about 3 hours to work with, 2.5 to 3 hours. So we're like, all right, you know what? Wrigley traffic, I remember from last time, it was terrible. Why don't we just go out now? There's no way they're coming back from a 3-run deficit, and we'll just get stuck in traffic if we stay. So we made the decision to leave. We're walking out of the ballpark. We're just checking our phones, and they tie it. George Springer hits a triple to left field, and it's like, oh, of course that happens. In the end, they end up losing in extras, which part of that was a little comforting that you didn't see a win, especially because Vladdy hit a ball that was almost went over the fence for a bomb in the 10th inning there. So we were so close to missing an awesome moment that wasn't meant to be. Obviously, Saturday, bit of a rough game, a couple rain delays, and they ended up losing 3-2. So not all that memorable from the baseball. And, of course, they went on Sunday. But overall, it was an awesome trip. How about yourself? I know you went out west. You got to see Luke Combs. I know you're a big country guy. How was that?
Oh, breathtaking experience, man. Being that close was pretty wild. I didn't realize. Now, I've never been to like some sort of like festivals. Like I've been to concerts, but when it comes to like I guess like Boots and Hearts around here, I guess would be similar to that. I don't think there's much camping going on at this one in Country Thunder out there in Alberta. But holy God, the 355 milliliter beers, $10. I thought the freaking sporting events were shafting you, but holy sweet mother. And you think about it, it's only tickets. You can't buy it with like a $10 bill. No, you got to buy tickets. One ticket is one beer.
Oh, it's like a fair. It's like one of those C&E things.
But that's where they get you, right? Because you buy, I'm going to have like 5 or 6. You buy 5. You don't use a couple. You waste $20. There you go. That's what they get you.
Wow.
So it's kind of greasy, but overall, man, incredible experience. And if anybody has not been out to Banff and Lake Louis, Jesus, Murphy, just get out there. Like, it's incredible stuff. All right. Now that we've talked about our lives, which is boring enough for people, let's get to the stuff that's not boring. And Chris Bassitt
had some beer, right? That's what Chris Bassitt said.
Yeah, it's been a very weird last week or two for Chris Bassitt with the comments about the dome in his last start where he was no good in the early part of it, and then hops on Chris Rose's pod. And well, I think we got the audio for it, and I'll just let you guys play, and we'll have a little discussion afterwards because it's interesting.
Blue Jay fans. Where did it go wrong?
I'll say this. I think we do a lot of things right here, but I don't want to identify the problems because some of the problems I don't think are fixable. The one thing I will say about the Blue Jays for this year, we put, I think, $700 million into Shohei Ohtani's basket and didn't get him. We really didn't have a pivot. This is the reality of the landscape, is that you need 3 or 4 superstars. We have to get more hitting to protect Vladdy, and then the pitching has to be a lot better. There's so many things that you could talk about. I mean, I could literally talk for 45 minutes on this of things that didn't go great. But again, I just don't think saying those things publicly is what is best for this organization. And even if I leave, I still don't think I would ever be like, hey, the Blue Jays have this, this, and this. It's because I've never done that with the White Sox or Oakland or the Mets. I feel very uncomfortable talking about that just because I love all the guys that I've ever played with. So it's just I'd rather protect them than hurt them.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Rob. I know you got a lot of things to say, but the first thing that jumped out to me was the changes that need to be made. They're not fixable. So what that tells me, hey, Ross, Mark, 2025 competing, it's a sham, fellas. It ain't happening. So that's just from the player itself. It's pretty wild, but it's Chris Bassitt, right? He says what he believes. I want to get your thoughts, pal.
No, it's just right there what you mentioned there, the unfixable part. I wanted to decode that with you.
Sure.
Because what exactly does he mean? He doesn't actually go into it, but I think you hit it right on the head, that the 2025 contention strategy, you're looking at a team right now that is investing a lot of money in their pitching rotation that, aside from Jose Barrios' great month of April, has for the most part been disappointing this season.
Yeah.
This is a team that, look, obviously, that's not to say that Jose Barrios himself has actually been pretty decent his last couple starts. Chris Bassitt had a really good run there right before the trade deadline, before we started struggling. Kevin Gausman, obviously, we know he started late in spring training and he had to ramp his way back up, and that might have put him behind the 8 ball. He's had his moments, but even our most optimistic selves coming into this season, Pricey, when you and I both picked the Jays to make the playoffs, we all said that best case scenario, this offense is going to be somewhere around league average, maybe a little bit above average. That's the best case scenario. And then if they're going to make the postseason and get across the finish line, it would have to be on the premise of their starting pitching being elite. It was elite last year. They were going to need that, a repeat of that. And that's not happened. Just look at the overall numbers. It just has not happened overall throughout the 3 guys who they still have after the Kikuchi trade. Obviously, Chris Bassitt's one of them, and then you have Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios. And that's not to say that those 3 guys can't necessarily be great starting pitchers in the big leagues again, but we saw the graphics on Sportsnet. If you've been watching Jays games all over the course of this last week, we're seeing in the last 5 years, they've led all of baseball in not 1, 2, and 3, but amongst the league leaders in innings pitched. They're all guys who are in their 30s right now. I think that a reasonable assumption can be made that these are guys that may be entering the back end of their big league careers, as in descending downwards. And when you're investing a whole lot of money into that rotation, and when you're a team that's predicated on pitching, if that's the production you're going to get, it's just not going to go well. You just don't have the resources to overcome that in your rotation. He mentions the Vladdy point, which I think was perfect. You have one guy who next season you can pencil in and be, this guy's an everyday hitter. He's going to be a difference maker at the plate. Spencer Horwitz, maybe he's getting there, but at this point, Vladdy's the only guy I'm confident in saying that he's going to play 150, 160 games next year and be a difference maker. No one else really there, if we're being honest with you. That's been the whole problem with the offense all year long. And obviously this season has gone awry. The last 2 months have been unwatchable in terms of a wins and losses perspective. It's been a long time since we've checked the standings meaningfully. The farm system, which we'll talk about later, and you mentioned it's been buzzing. For the most part, even with this injection of new prospects, just about everyone has them pegged as in the bottom third of the league in terms of prospect rankings, farm system rankings. So when the future is not good and the present's not good, and you want to contend, and you don't have limited resources to do so, that's what Chris Bassitt's talking about. It's an unfixable problem. They are a ways away from a World Series contender, which is what they should be doing right now, and they have limited resources to get there. So, yeah, I agree with Chris Bassitt for the most part. I think that these comments, and he did walk it back a bit. If you saw, the PR, the Sportsnet guys, they made the call from the top. We understand what happened, and he kind of walked it back a bit, but he was unfiltered and genuine when he was talking to Chris Rose. And honestly, I have no objection. I think he's right. I think that any other point of view is kind of absent of reality, to be honest with you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he's saying what every Blue Jay fan is feeling. He's saying what every Blue Jay fan thought when Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, whenever the hell when Mark recently took the media and was like, yeah, 2025, we're going to compete with what freaking team? Like you mentioned how the rotation is past their prime. I mean, you're looking at your three big arms in air quotes of Chris Bassitt, Jose Barrios, and Kevin Gosman. Bassett's 35, Gosman's 33, and Jose Barrios has a lot of miles on that arm. He's been, like you mentioned, he's been good his last couple starts, and he's right around his career averages. Like he just finds a way to get there. But even he's now 30 on a long-term contract. You have no clue what you're going to get from Alek Manoah, if at all, next season. Yariel Rodriguez is your only guy under 30, but God, you have no clue what you're getting from him from one inning to the next. So what makes you think that this team is going to compete, let alone your bullpen is probably, if not the worst in all of baseball, if not right at the bottom. And your offense, look, it's been fun to watch recently, but you're playing a bunch of tomato cans, and hell, you are one of those tomato cans, I guess, at this point. But playing the Angels, the 4 games they've beaten them, watching that team, and it's fun to beat them, fun to sweep them. But for the love of God, man, your offense isn't all that great, and your leadoff hitter, George Springer, is right near the end of his career, right? And like you mentioned, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's great. He's a freaking free agent after next season. Bo Bichette, who we don't know what the hell is going on with him. I think he's playing. He's down in Dunedin right now doing a little stuff, doing a little work, but that's about it. What's he going to be? Is he even going to put on a Blue Jays uniform the rest for his career? I mean, I mentioned that a while back when he went down initially. I'm like, does he play another game with this team? To this point, he hasn't. And who knows? I mean, people keep talking about him being traded in the offseason. So where is the path to success? There really isn't any. And Chris Bassitt right there sounded off and said what he believed and said what every Jays fan is feeling right now. But as you mentioned, he had to walk it back because, PR, but I like it. I like the candidness from the player.
I will say, if there's one thing that I do think he could have probably corrected, he did mention Shohei Ohtani in there, and obviously putting $700 million in the Ohtani basket. I will say, I do think that might be a little bit unfair to the front office. We talked about a lot on this podcast that we understand the $700 million allocated to a player like Shohei Ohtani. That's a beyond baseball decision. That is, you've really gotten like a global athlete, and the fallback option, and we talked about this before, is that the problem is that you go through all the free agent candidates that the Blue Jays, we wanted the Blue Jays to sign over the guys like Justin Turner and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and it's not a whole lot there. I saw Cody Bellinger on the weekend, his numbers, and Cody Bellinger's been fine. He's been a loud cry to the player he was last year, where there was talks he'd get $200 million. That looks like ridiculous conversation right now that he would ever get $200 million at this stage of his career. And the guys like Jorge Soler, I know he's been balling in Atlanta, but that he's already on his second team. The Giants already gave up on him. They traded him already. And all the other guys that we talked about, JD Martinez has been fine, but not really much of a difference maker at this stage of his career. In fact, funny enough, the only guy who might have been a big difference maker is the guy that Jays fans didn't want at all, was Matt Chapman. Jays fans would have gotten furious if they were chosen to re-sign him for the kind of money that he was looking for. And he really looks like the only guy who's really been a home run signing for the Giants. But other than that, it's not as if the answer was out in free agency. This is the problem with the Jays, is that they needed big time answers, and unfortunately, with the resources that they have, they can't go out and trade them. They couldn't make the Juan Soto trade that the Yankees made because they don't have the prospect capital. They already have an ownership group that's spending a ton of money, even though it's the payroll has been slashed a little bit with the trade deadline, so they'll have a little bit more flexibility in the offseason with a better free agency class. But for the most part, it's hard to imagine that even the most optimistic outlook of this offseason will produce a World Series contender in 2025.
Yeah, and I had to look up Jorge Soler because you brought him up, and I'm just like, man, I don't know if all over Twitter, all right, everyone's like, Jay's got to get Soler. They got to get the power back. But look, he's been great in the 15 games with the Braves, and look, you need more of a sample size than that. In the 93 that he played with the Giants, the team that gave him said contract, he had 12 homers in 93 games. But then perspective, I think like Ernie Clements at 10 at 105 or something. So it ain't much difference, bud. And he had a 749 OPS. Is that really paying an arm and a leg that you would have needed to do? No. So that the free agent class was a sham and a half. And as you mentioned, Matt Chapman was probably the best one there. Like, it's pretty painful to say now, but it is what it is. And I'm with Chris Bassitt. I think every Jays fan feels the same way. It's just the front office doesn't. And let's be honest, they're the most important people that should figure it out. So I don't know if you want to keep talking about this, Berto, but
I think we pretty much ironed it out. We gave a good time on it, but yeah.
Beating it over the head right now. So let's get to something a little bit more positive. All right. The big Canadian, one of the best Canadian baseball players to ever put on a major league uniform, has finally retired, and it's Joey Votto. I was kind of, half joking in spring training when he slipped in the bat, and we talked about it afterwards, and I said he'd probably never play a game with the Blue Jays, and well, here we are. We obviously saw the Instagram video where he announces his retirement from professional baseball.
In the Salem Field parking lot.
Yeah, it's the typical Joey Votto fashion, right? Just doing the thing and then running out of gas on the way to Toronto. It's like, oh, yeah, just way to go, Joey. But, I mean, look, let's be honest, Rob. We saw this thing coming. I mean, when you, me, and Mo were down there watched the Bison's game, it was very cool being on the field and seeing Joey freaking Votto walk by you. It was nuts. Yeah. But then we watched the game. And he went 0 for 2 with 2 walks, but he struck out twice. He didn't put the ball in play once. He ended his, I guess, Bison's tenure with like a 5-something OPS. It was no good. And I'm glad he saw that. So what do you have to say about Joey Votto?
Well, in terms of from the Blue Jays angle, I mean, look, like you mentioned, it was going to happen. Like we saw this coming from a mile away, literally. I mean, obviously, if you recall the beginning part of the year, there was actually like a conceivable baseball related way that Joey Votto was going to make an impact. If you recall, I know it's been a long time ago, but Daniel Vogelbach was on this roster and he was hitting cleanup and getting pinch hit opportunities from the left side, and now he's a free agent and nobody wants to touch him. I mean, funny how that works. You're a cleanup hitter one day and then a free agent that nobody wants the other day. That's the lineup that we built. But regardless, is that he could have filled in the Daniel Vogelbach role. That was an active way for him to come into the lineup. And now all of a sudden, obviously, the season goes awry. The Blue Jays, the DFA Daniel Vogelbach, they bring up the young kids. They have Spencer Horwitz. They have Will Wagner now, obviously, after the Astros trade. The other guys like, Addison Barger, Lelio Jimenez, Joey Loperfido.
Yeah.
There really just wasn't a place on the roster for Joey Votto. Even had he been like somewhat competent, which in the end, he wasn't. Like there was no pathway for Joey Votto to actually play baseball for the Blue Jays in a meaningful way. Like if he was going to get called up, it was going to have to be sort of a ceremonial thing where it's just, you want to pay homage to one of the greatest Canadian baseball players of all time, like you mentioned, have him wear his hometown uniform, playing in front of Rogers Center. In a sense, a great way to get the casual fans back interested in the team. They've probably been checked out for a couple of months now. Maybe sell some jerseys. That would have been the reason. That would have been the motive to call him up. And obviously, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it was, the organization going out and telling Joey, hey, listen, buddy, I know that we gave you a pathway, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Or Joey just saying, look, I'm done. I don't want to be told that I'm done. So I'm just going to leave on my own terms. A little coincidence that happened during the Red series. So in terms of the Blue Jays angle, yeah, there's not a whole lot to go. In terms of the overall big picture, baseball, MLB, baseball, like in Canada, Joey Votto was a legend. Joey Votto was an absolute legend and a guy who, had he played, had he been in his prime in this era, he would have been heralded a lot higher than had he been in the era that he was in. And the big part of that is because we cared a lot about counting stats. We cared a lot about counting stats back in the late 90s, the early 2000s, even the early 2010s, if we're being honest. Stuff like OPS and WAR and WRC plus, OPS plus, all these numbers that we love to throw out there that we have basically universally confirmed in baseball is now the universal numbers for evaluating players. Joey Votto rocks in all those numbers. A 64.5 career WAR. The fact that there's any debate at all that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame is ridiculous. He should be there easily. And obviously a great career with the Reds. The big problem was that he played, for the Cincinnati Reds in a market that no one really cares about. And obviously baseball being a regional market, we don't really watch teams, other teams outside of our market until they make the postseason. And the Reds very seldomly did with Joey Votto. So unfortunately, we weren't able to see a whole lot of him. But you look at the numbers, it was terrific. He was a terrific player, terrific career. And yeah, he's going to be the third Canadian to ever go in the Hall of Fame behind obviously Larry Walker and Fergie Jenkins. And the best Canadian, I think Jeff Blair mentioned it on the Sportsnet, the trailer. I want to say the trailer or the narration that he did. I don't know if you caught that, but he said he's the best. He's going to be the best Canadian of this generation, of this century. So yeah, hats off to Joey Votto. I wish it would have been kind of nice. Part of me wishes would have been nice to see him put on the Blue Jays uniform just as a sort of a retirement gift. But yeah, obviously a great career for Joey, and that was a cool experience seeing his last week in professional baseball up close and personal at Salem Field in Buffalo.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. I truly believe that he made this choice because he said in spring training, he didn't want to get called up just for a Make-A-Wish Foundation for Joey Votto. Like, he didn't want any of that stuff. He wanted to come up if he deserved to come up. And I think a lot of things played into this scenario. I think one being the Jays not being any good, so there's no playoffs possibly for Joey Votto. And then the fact that, as you mentioned, a lot of the influx of young players and his play wasn't any good. I think that was he was just the end of it, like in his quote, right? He's like, I'm just not good anymore. And so I think it really truly came from him. Now, for Joey Votto, the baseball player, it's been a treat. 17-year career with one team. Look, I know it doesn't happen a lot in sports anymore, but you absolutely love to see it, especially with a small market team in Cincinnati. You absolutely love to see one guy, just be with one organization his entire career. It's just really, really refreshing. And that's why I kind of like that he didn't play with the Blue Jays, to kind of, he played with one team his whole career. But I'm just going to rip through some of his numbers, Rob, and they are just, I still can't get over them. Almost 1,200 RBIs, 1,144 RBIs for his career. Whereas at 1,365 walks, nuts. Career 294 batting average. Yeah, don't worry, we'll move on. A 409 OBP for his career. That is nuts.
I believe he led the National League in on base. Like, how many times?
7 times.
Seven
I believe
times.
it was
yeah.
7 times he led the NL or big leagues or something like that in OBP. 409 for his career. And at one point, he had a stretch of, what is that? Actually, you know what? Screw that. In 2015, even the Jays glory years that everyone loves, 434,
MVP
454, 459 OBP. That is insanity. And then to the in-depth stats, he had a 511 slug, a 920 career OPS, and a career OPS plus of 144. I mean, if that doesn't scream Hall of Fame, and as you mentioned earlier, a WAR of 64.5. Like, yeah.
Also, not to mention MVP. The only third Canadians to ever win MVP.
6-time
Larry
All-Star,
Walker and Justin Morneau.
6-time All-Star, Gold Glove, MVP. What else do you need to say? The only thing is, like, playoffs, and you can't really, like, as we've seen from guys like Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, one guy can't drag a team to the postseason.
Yeah.
So
Barry Bonds never won a World Series.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And that's not the reason he's not in the Hall. Let's just make that very clear.
Of course.
Absolutely. Yes. But Rob, it was a pleasure, as you mentioned, seeing Joey Votto in his last, I guess, week or so as a
last week. Yeah,
it was just kind of surreal, right? We're standing there talking Alan Roden, or just before, just after, and there goes Joey right in front. And you're like, oh, whoa. Like, it's some sort of aura around him, even at 40, is pretty remarkable.
I will say, like, one thing, and obviously you'll have the naysayers, the contrarians. If you recall Joey Votto's comments about playing for Team Canada and all that stuff that happened a ways away, that kind of left a sour taste in people's mouths. And obviously, I'm misquoting. I don't know exactly what he said. I don't have it in front of me exactly, but he was like, I think it was something along the lines of, like, not like caring whether or not he plays for Team Canada, or he doesn't care about baseball in Canada or stuff like that. And I think that, in a sense, do you feel like this attempt that, let's be real here. Joey Votto was born in Texas or Florida. I don't think he signs with the Blue Jays. I don't think he signs a minor league deal with the Blue Jays and is willing to take the buses to Rochester and to Worcester, Massachusetts to play minor league games. I think that in large part, this year specifically, Joey Votto signing a minor league deal, accepting to go down, play in Buffalo, the long rehab, stepping on, trying to work his way up to the big leagues, not accepting a Make-A-Wish. In a sense, maybe that was his attempt to rectify his comments at an earlier time about endure himself more to the Canadian baseball fans. And I think that his message to Toronto and to Blue Jays fans was really heartfelt, really, for a guy who'd never played a game for the Blue Jays, saying that he really wanted, and he was very unfiltered and honest about it. He wanted to play for the Blue Jays, wanted to play in front of his home city, and he was disappointed that at this stage of his career, he was not capable of doing so on merit anymore. Do you think that all this attempt to come and play for the Blue Jays was trying to rectify some of the comments that he made earlier.
I think it's definitely there's probably definitely some validity to that. Uh, I think it was. Let's be honest, Rob. We talked about it right when it happened. It's a mixture of Joey Votto trying to do that, and Mark and Ross being like, "Oh, you're a good Canadian boy. Give us some good press because yep, we need it." I think it was just a bit of both. And did it help? It's hard to say. I think a lot. There are some baseball fans, Canadian baseball fans, who are just constantly going to be angry at everything, so they're going to be fine. For me personally, look, I love when players play for Canada, right? Seeing, even though Freddie Freeman's not technically Canadian, plays for his mom and puts on the Canadian jersey, and I'm like, that's freaking awesome, right? And Joey Votto, yeah, the comments probably sucked, but in the end, he is Canadian and he's one of the best to ever do it. With
Because I'll be honest,
and he did.
Yeah.
And remember that home run he hit at Rogers Center against the United States? Eventually lost that game, but just the moment, right? And he did put that effort in. As much as people want to go at him for all the negative stuff, there was some positives to it, and I don't hold it against him, but some people do.
I'll be honest. I think, like, for me personally, I think it actually like helped my perception of him. And obviously, I always knew Joey Votto. He's the guy. He's former MVP, Canadian, great guy. Puts up all these amazing numbers. Even though I didn't really get to see a lot of his games in Cincinnati, but it was always thinking, oh well, you have Freddie Freeman, a guy who is born and raised in California, has American passport, and he's playing for Team Canada, and you're like, you have these trepidations about it. That's, to me, that always felt kind of weird. Like, why are you feeling this way towards your home country? And the fact that seeing this all go down, seeing how unfiltered he was to the Blue Jays fans, it sort of helped my perception of it. I'll be honest with you, and I imagine probably a lot of people did. So hats off to Joey Gallo, and he'll be in Cooperstown, I think, sooner rather than later.
Joey Gallo.
I got it.
I mean, we did see
Joey
him.
Votto.
We did see Joey Gallo. So
the same day, yes, the same day that we saw Joey Votto in Buffalo, he was warming up for the Rochester Red Wings, and that's what they're called. Yeah, so
you see Buddy stretching in the back room too. I'm like, it's kind of crazy. That's Joey Gallo right there. Holy crap!
Anyways, shout out to Joey Votto. Awesome career.
Fantastic career. All the best in the retirement.
My favorite Blue Jay who never played a game. He goes neck and neck with Mike Napa. I'll give him the edge.
Yeah, I can get behind that one. All right, Berto. Well, you haven't told me a lick as to what you're doing for Stat Genius, so I'm just going to sit back, relax, and let you take the wheel. All right, let's see what you got in Stat Genius.
Let's get it. All right. So Pricey, I got some good news and I got some bad news for you. Well, actually, I get some good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?
Rip the Band-Aid off. Give me the bad stuff.
Bad news. So we talked about the feasibility of the Toronto Blue Jays competing in 2025. We don't necessarily believe in them. And I'm going to give you another reason not to believe in them.
Oh, great.
Because the Blue Jays this season, as if you needed any more bad news, there are 6 teams in baseball that are worse than the Toronto Blue Jays. They are the Oakland A's, LA Angels, Anaheim Angels, whatever, the Colorado Rockies, Chicago White Sox, the Washington Nationals, and I'm blanking on one. The Texas Rangers, yes, the defending World Series champ, Texas Rangers. Shout out to you, Rob Manfred. The Blue Jays have been awesome beating up on these teams. They have an 18-7 record. They kill the bad teams. However, when the Blue Jays have to face a good team, they are overmatched. They are very overmatched. Obviously, you can probably do the math in your head. If they're 8 games under 500 right now. If they're 11 over, then they're 19 under. They're 19 games under 500, 41-60 against pretty much anyone but teams that are any team above them in the standings. Any team that's not as bad or worse than the Blue Jays, they are 19 games under 500. That is a 40.5 winning percentage. And if you extrapolate it to 162 games, that is a 65 win team. That is the Toronto Blue Jays when they're not facing the 6 worst teams in baseball. The only teams that are worse than them record-wise. So for everyone that, so basically, no, not that we needed any more negative, crossover results, statements going out there. This is not a good team. This is not a good team, obviously. We all knew that, but just to further reinforce it. All right, Pricey, on to the more fun stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people might have seen this already, but these games, we mentioned, not a whole lot of meaning behind it. You just want to see good stuff from players and fun little things. Well, on Monday, we're in for a treat because the Blue Jays are heading to Fenway Park. They're going to play a doubleheader against the Boston Red Sox. And our very own, not anymore. You know, will always be ours. Part of him will always be ours. But Danny Jansen, former Blue Jay, longtime Blue Jay, now a member of the Boston Red Sox, will become the first player in MLB history to play for 2 teams in one game. Now you're asking, guys, how's that possible? How can one player play for 2 teams? Like, what is this? Is this like this is like rec league? Oh, we don't have enough players. Let's switch over to the other side. Like, no, that's not what's happening. Suspended game back from June. We know that that's why they're replaying this game. Danny Jansen was in the batter's box for the Toronto Blue Jays in the second inning on a 1-0 count when the game was called off and will be resumed back in August. And when games get resumed after a suspended time, the stats go towards when the game started, back in June, when it started. So however that game ends against the Blue Jays and the Red Sox on Monday, the box score on Baseball Reference will have Danny Jansen in the lineup card for both teams, for both the Blue Jays and for the Red Sox. Alex Cora already mentioned Reese McGuire, who was catching at that time. He's back in AAA. Danny Jansen will be the starting catcher that day. And that's pretty awesome. And I know that you saw, for anyone that missed it, Juan Soto, he actually hit his big league home run, his first career big league home run before he made his big league debut. A similar situation. You had a suspended game in May, and I think he made his big league debut a little later. So when you look at the box score for May, he actually hit a home run before making his actual official big league debut. So a little quirky stuff happens with these suspended games. But honestly, Pricey, or for a guy who's a nerd of the game, I love this stuff. What are your thoughts?
I think it's cool. I think it's pretty cool, but it's going to be very weird. So who inherits that 1-0 count from Danny?
It'll be whoever replaces him in the lineup, in the Blue Jays' original lineup from that day.
Okay, probably Brian Servin hitting the 4-hole or something. I don't know. Let's see what happens there. That's pretty cool, man. I think it's a really cool thing, but I'm going to throw up when I see Danny Jansen in a Red Sox uniform. Let's be honest. It's not going to be fun to look at, especially since Cutter Crawford. Cutter Coffey's been in the minor leagues, and Paulino, the other guy we got in the trade, hasn't played a game yet. He's hurt, so great. So, and then Danny's raking with the Red Sox. So
I know he'd be great at Fenway. Like he's always hit well at Fenway. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I just feel like he's always kind of played hot potato with that monster back and forth.
Full hitter with that monster. Yeah. It's a match made in heaven. So yeah, absolutely. And as for your other point, the negative one, I don't want to bring that up, but I want to spin another thing to you. Something that we've talked about early in the season when the offense was pathetic, even though it's still not great, but it's better now than it was. Interesting.
Isn't that funny how it works?
But the whole thing was that if the Jays score 5 or more runs, they win a ball game. And that has continued. I don't know the exact number, but I heard on the Fan Morning Show today that it was like something like 40-something and 9 or something like that when you score 5 runs. Now, it's not easy to do every single game, obviously, but that tells you that they can't, it's right there, man. And it's so frustrating watching this team play anything less than, anyways, enough of that, because no negatives, Rob. No negatives. We're good. We're on the positive swing of the show. So we're going to move on to the farm where there's some pretty good positives. So we'll talk about that right now, bud. Well, Rob, you know what, buddy? Let's get into the biggest one of all, Jake Bloss. I thought it was a perfect spot to put him out there against the Angels. And then when some people are thinking, well, maybe, against the Red Sox in doubleheader, well, he won't be on regular turn rest for him. So what are you doing? So that won't probably happen either. Regardless of that, he made his start yesterday with the Bisons. And, well, we saw his first start. He's had 2 starts since then. And he's just gone to combine 9 2/3 innings pitched, hasn't allowed a run, struck out 8. As an opponent's batting average of $171 and a whip of 1.14.
What was the pitch count yesterday? You know that by any chance?
65, I believe.
Okay, so they're ramping up a little bit.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to ramp him up slowly. So he got to like 65 pitches yesterday. He did struggle with command at times. I think he allowed 2 hits and walked 3 in the 3 innings that he was there. But again, didn't find a run. Scoreboard doesn't matter. ERA's still 0. And he has been very, very good with the Bisons in the 3 outings. We saw him there in the first game, and he looked, again, kind of battled command to start, but really found it and locked in. His second outing was his best, though. 4 innings. I think he walked like 1 guy and struck out. He was great. So what are your early takeaways from Jake Bloss? Obviously, it's only been, 3 or 4 starts at the Bisons and held very minimal minor league stats. But Like we're seeing 23-year-old right-hander. Stuff looks really good.
My thoughts are Bowden Francis has been awesome. He has had 2 back-to-back great starts. He won the AL Player of the Week. Congratulations, Bowden Francis. Jake Boss needs to be the starter. He needs to take a spot in the rotation and be the starter for the moving forward. Look, you hate to do this. You just hate to do it for a guy who Bowden Francis is trying to carve out a big league career, and he's been great.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like we know that for this team, given their current state, Jake Boss is going to be hopefully a guy who can be a redeemable a redeemable player for this team in 2025, a guy who can actually help this team. Whereas Bowden Francis, look, 28 years old, he's a guy who I think can be like, he can have a role in the major leagues. But I think if you're going into a season with Bowden Francis as a legitimate starting pitching option for you, then you're basically setting yourself up for a disappointing year. I think you want to go with the upside. Jake Boss obviously has a ton of upside. He was a top prospect for the Astros, a top 100 prospect in baseball. And he has been fantastic, as you mentioned, so far through his first 3 Buffalo starts. He's big league ready. I mean, maybe they're trying to ramp him up a little bit more so that he's ready for, I don't know, maybe 80 pitches in the big leagues.
Yeah.
But to me, at this point, like in a season where you need to find guys, you mentioned it's an audition for 2025. Jake Boss needs to get a shot. I know he will get a shot eventually. It's tough to give it to Bowden, but he's got to start. Or maybe you want to do a 6-man rotation, although I'm not sure. I would really be for that. I really don't need to take away starts from all these other guys just to see Bowden Francis start more. Unfortunately, it's just what it is. It's the nature of the game. Jake Bloss, my thoughts are he's got to be at the big league level ASAP.
Yeah, and Bowden Francis is going to get another start against the Angels, so maybe pad those stats even more. And
I was just about to say that. Yeah, exactly.
Another mute point for you. He's not going anywhere if he's going to keep pitching like that, even if it's against a bunch of tomato cans. But yeah, let's move on now. We talked about it, Rob. We talked about Charles McAdoo and his pathetic start to Double-A. Now, we weren't worried about him, right? It was very minimal sample size. This is the thing with Jays fans and sports fans in general. You need a sample size, especially in baseball, to really get a read on the player. We talked about him going 0 for 17. The strikeout numbers were up. It was pretty ugly stuff. Well, he has been red hot over the last little while, and his average is now with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. So that's including the 0 for 17 to start. He's hitting 259 with a 385 on base, a 519 slug, and a 904 OPS. Hold on, let me try and get the exact numbers here. We got a total of 3 doubles, a triple, and 3 home runs. Yeah, dude can mash. He had a stretch there of a tough start as a New Hampshire Fisher Cat, but boy, oh boy, he's turned it on, and he's been great.
I feel like, I feel like, at this point, perhaps I'm not sure they'd want to call him. I'm not sure how much exposure he's had to Double-A. But I would think if he finishes the season strong at Double-A and has a good spring training, I think he could start the season in Buffalo next year. And
yeah, he's played a total of 43 games at Double-A.
So not quite nothing. He's had fair share of experience there. Yeah, I think if he continues to mash and has a good spring next year, I think he could start the season in Buffalo. And if you start the season in Buffalo, I think you're just now we're half on the QEW to Toronto, right? So exactly. Yeah, no, Charles McAdoo. I think that this is definitely big for me because we mentioned this organization needs to find power. How are they going to find power? This is a guy who mashes. You mentioned those numbers: a 900 slug, 900 OPS, hitting bombs, hitting extra base hits, 519 slugging. Yeah, no, that's a guy who can be at a high upside ploy. And Isaiah kind of left with the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, remember that signing, the vitriol that we had, the signing was made, and he turned into have a really nice first half of the year for the Jays and traded to a guy who I think, who knows, like you mentioned, doing really good in Double-A and could be a major league contributor in 2025. We'll have to see. But yeah, nice stuff from Charles McAdoo. Friend of the show.
And he's only 22 years old at Double-A, putting those type of numbers up. He turned, what is that? He turned 22 in March, something like that. So he's obviously, just turned, or no, at the start of the season he turned. But this is the thing I want to say as well about McAdoo. He's hit at every level. His first year in the big leagues was last season, and he was drafted in 2023.
You mean the minor leagues?
What did I say?
Big leagues.
Okay, well, we're not there yet, but yes, minor leagues. But he just got drafted last year in the 13th round, and he immediately went to A-ball and had a 922 OPS in the 28 games. Then, love that, so go to high A to start the season. Now he put up a 976 in 60 games. Obviously, it's in Pittsburgh's farm. Then he got called up to Altoona for the Curve, because I've been to those games before in Pennsylvania. It's pretty cool. He had in 27 games, he had an 837 OPS. Then he gets traded to the Blue Jays, and in his 16 games with the New Hampshire Fish, he had a 904. Dude has hit everywhere he's gone. And he's only 22 years old. He's a third baseman / outfielder. I mean, what does this Jays team need? They need a dude who can play the damn hot corner. It could be interesting. We'll see how things go, but in minimal sample size, obviously 16 games, he has been outstanding for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. And obviously after that slow start, the numbers have been ridiculous. Now, some other guys. Josh Kasevich doesn't stop hitting. Contact hitter by a mile, but holy crap, dude can hit. He's hitting on the season now, he's hitting 327 with a 373 on base in Buffalo. But obviously the OPS only being 773. So it's very, obviously with the 327 average, it's pretty crazy. But dude is hit at just about every level he's been at. Doesn't strike out a lot, doesn't walk a whole lot, kind of the Ernie Clement type of role, but hits a lot. And it's exciting stuff. I don't know. And he's your 10th ranked prospect, and he's slugging a AAA, kind of knocking on the door.
Yeah, I'd be a little more excited if they didn't have a few Josh Kaseviches at home, if you know the meme. Yeah, obviously credit to him, 327 hitting in the minors, contact hitter. Jays have a lot of those. They have a lot of those on the big league roster right now. Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, Leo Jimenez to a smaller degree, but yeah. I think that's perhaps a guy that you maybe try to dangle in a trade, considering you have a surplus, and when you have a surplus, you're at a position of leverage. So who knows? I mean, I don't have to start trading guys before they start their big league career.
No.
I don't want to throw that out there, especially in a year where the Jays are, well, we mentioned earlier, far from contending, and the only reason you trade prospects is if you're contending. But to me, like, that's a guy who it's the right deal comes along. Maybe you don't you pick up the phone, you have a little conversation.
I just don't think the Jays are in any spot to start trading there.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, right, for sure.
I just don't see that happening one bit. Now, Alan Roden. Well, obviously, we were able to talk to him. Yeah, he's hitting 271 with a 375 on base, 807 OPS. On the season in 48 games now with the Bisons. He's really turned it on now. The power is a little bit there now, showing with the Bisons. And look, he's another guy, right on the doorstep. He's found some power. I think that was a big thing going in last season. He's a big contact hitter, great stuff. But you want to see a little bit of pop. And he's starting to show that at the AAA level. It's exciting stuff, man. What do you think about Allen?
I mean, do we maybe see him this year at some point? Is that getting a little too ambitious? I mean, I know he's in AAA. He's playing well. You already have a lot of young guys up here. I mean, is he going to get consistent reps every day? Who are you taking reps away from? I don't know. I feel like he's a guy that maybe has an outside shot to make an impact this year. I definitely think that he's going to play a role in 2025 at some point. That appears that that's going to be the case. But yeah, no, it's really good. I think that's a guy who, look, if he's called up, I don't know that's too early.
Yeah, I definitely don't think so. I think it's either him or Jonathan Clase. They're both outfielders, obviously, and Clase, really since we saw him and he had a couple doubles, hasn't been hitting very well at all. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. Now to the lower minor leagues, where Warren Watts Brown, a guy that we've talked about a few times now, just drafted last year by the Blue Jays. He's right there, the 20th ranked prospect, which I think is a little low for him. But again, 22 years old at high A. We talked about his Dunedin numbers in 12 starts in ERA 3.43 in 57 innings. He had 74 Ks. I mean, he was dominating. Gets the call to Vancouver. Had a rough couple starts to start it. But since then, he's been awesome. In his last 2 outings, he's gone 12 innings, allowed 8 hits, 3 runs over 12 innings, walked 4 and 15 strikeouts over said 12 innings. He's been very good. And again, big right-handed pitcher. He's 6'3", 22 years old. Again, another young guy that they're going to push a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets a look at some point. Maybe I wouldn't say New Hampshire this season, but he'll probably be a guy to start next year at AA in New Hampshire and kind of see where it goes from there. But exciting stuff. Big righty in Vancouver who's doing some great things. Down to the last guy. And you talked about the gift that keeps on giving in Isaiah Kieran-Falefa. Well, Justin Turner may just be the same damn thing, Rob. Because RJ Shrek, like we talked about a few times since we talked about him, we saw him in Vancouver play against the Canadians. And it was a 1-for-1, right? RJ Schreck, I know you're not a big fan of the whole 24-year-old guy who's in AA and blah, blah, blah.
I have trepidations.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But in his 17 games with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, again, when you look at his high A numbers that he played with, obviously when we saw him, he had an 865 OPS in 78 games, looked really good. He played 8 games with the AA team in Seattle, wasn't any good. 544 OPS, he really struggled in those 8 games. Since coming over to New Hampshire, he's hitting 305 with a 397 on base and and over 1,000 OPS. He's got, he has more home runs he has 4 home runs already in 17 games with, which is interesting because you look at his career stuff, hasn't shown the whole lot of power, but the walk to strikeout numbers have been great. What was it before he got traded? Right. In high A ball, 57 walks to 47 strikeouts. And you're like, okay, that's really good. He has double the strikeouts than he does walks with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, 16 strikeouts to 8 walks. So very interesting stuff. But the power has gone up. He also has 5 doubles as well and a triple and 4 stolen bases in 17 games. I mean, since he's been a New Hampshire Fisher Cat, again, very small sample, but he has been destroying the baseball. So a little something there. Justin Turner for RJ Schreck. Not a bad one to look at right
Worth
now.
a shot. Worth a shot.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Rob. Now, God, I would say, do you want to talk about the actual ball club itself? I want to wrap it up with one thing.
We should, before we do that, I think we paid homage to Joey Votto earlier. I think it's time to pay homage to our guys at Homage.
Oh, that was
Homage specializes in ultra comfy, high quality looks, repping sports, pop culture, and more legendary moments. Learn more about Homage with a link in the description. It'll be on our YouTube page. Check it out. We obviously have a couple shirts, a couple stuff from Homage, and we were big fans. We're not just paying the bills. It's just generally comfy stuff. We've worn on the pot of time. So definitely all of you guys listening, watching, whatever, make sure, subscribe to Homage, buy their stuff. Great stuff.
And obviously, it's just not just Blue Jay stuff either. You want to get some other gear. I know you're a Chiefs guy, so you can get some Chiefs gear if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Cole's a Chiefs guy, so there you go. Oh, he's probably Mahomes guy as well. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, there you go. Oh boy. Okay.
I got one main allegiance though.
Yeah. So for anybody not watching right now, we mentioned at the top of the show that Rob and Mo went to Lambeau, and Rob just put cheese on his head. Attaboy, Rob. Attaboy. But yeah, man, stuff's really comfy. To be honest, if they put some Leaf stuff on there, I'll probably hop on that type of bandwagon as well. Grab me some of that. But anyways, yes, the last thing I want to talk about, Rob, is Ernie Clement. Like, what the hell did we see yesterday? I know it's something small at the end. I wanted to bring it up earlier, but we were cooking. What the hell, man? Like, was it a 4.6 feet off the ground?
Yes. You look at a ball at his teeth.
You look at pretty much. The ball's at his face, and he hits it out. I think he has this season, he's got the I guess the highest ball where you've hit a home run and the lowest one, which is nuts. Yeah. And Kyle Higashioka is the one that people keep talking about where he hit it off a position player throwing 35. So it's like for him to do it against like 97, like at his face is ridiculous. Pretty crazy. And also homered in 3 straight games because sure.
Yeah. No, just like on a more redeemable thing, like Ernie Clement has been good. He's been good for the Blue Jays this season. He's been an above league average hitter. I mean, even in your wildest dreams, even with the opportunities that you never thought Ernie Clement would get that he's gotten this season, I never thought he would be like a plus big league hitter based on what we've seen so far throughout his limited big league career and minor league career. We never thought this kind of upside was there. We heard at spring training, the speed, the contact, the defense is all good, but he's actually been doing it with the bat too. He's a 3-win player on Baseball Reference. He's I think almost a 2-win player on Fangraphs. Ernie Clements is stable. He's going to have a roster spot next season. He's going to be a major league player on this team. Whether it's an everyday player, we'll see how the rest of the roster gets filled out. I mean, you might have to by default because just simply, like we mentioned, the skeleton of the 2025 team right now just looks very, very thin. But he's going to be on the big league roster next year. He's definitely going to have at least a bench role, probably a platoon role, somewhat. Sure. He's having a good season, and he's been fun to watch too. And we haven't had him on the podcast, but like from all it seems, a great guy, a funny guy in the interviews too.
He definitely does. And the last thing I wanted to say, Rob, and going back to the on the farm part, because I know you mentioned earlier, and I know I'm jumping all over the place here, but it was something I wanted to bring up and I forgot to. Yep. You mentioned how the farm system was still really low and it's not very good.
Yep.
You look at the farm system right now. I mean, you look at the top, let's say 15 guys. Okay. Actually, no, screw it. Top 20 guys. Elvis, we know that one. Ricky Tiedemann, we see what's happening there. And Adam Macko, we don't know what the hell the future holds with him. And let's keep going here. Brandon Barriera. Dude can't stay healthy, but his stuff is off the charts when he does throw the baseball. And it's like you look at the high upside that when these guys do come back, like a Ricky Tiedemann, you could get an Alek Manoah back, but these are all question marks, right? Adam Macko, obviously Trey Savage is going to be in the organization at one point. Cal Steven was just drafted this year. He's their 7th ranked prospect ahead of McAdoo right now. There's a lot of guys in the minor leagues with massive question marks, and a lot of them health related, which, we can't really control, unfortunately. But I want to touch on that because if guys were healthy, I think you'd see the Jays farm system a lot higher than what it is. But hey, if fans or buts, doesn't matter. All right, buddy. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. It's been a blast as always, pal. It's been a while since we had a conversation, but we had a lot of things we wanted to discuss. So as for myself, James Price, Robin Tillemont, Sammy behind the glass, AC as well. Appreciate you guys for listening and watching as always. And go Jays.
Go Jays.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.